Hey friends, this is Tim Stevens with LeadingSmart, and this is a fun conversation. I get to talk to my friend Betsy Sunny, who is here, and we've known each other. Betsy, how long? We met 4 years ago?
Yeah,
Three, five? I don't know.
somewhere between the 3 to 5 year realm. It time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, and Betsy and I got to work together, like work at the same organization for a few years, but work together for almost a year on some projects that was super fun. And as I stepped away from Will, it made me think, okay, if I get to choose people I get to work with in the future, Betsy is someone I would choose to work with. We're talking today about the fact that you're going to be doing some work with Leading Smart to help some of our churches, but let's back up. You've worked with some pretty interesting and significant organizations from Catalyst to North Point to Willow. So take us through that. Take us through a little bit of like your career snapshot.
Yeah, so I've been in ministry for the last 14 years, which is crazy. But I feel like I like to say I've accidentally stumbled into some of the country's largest churches and Christian spaces. And so I started off as a fellow at Catalyst. If you ever went to Catalyst from 2014 to 2015, there's a chance you and I have spoken on the phone. And I
Awesome.
loved that. Got to help really be a concierge to pastors and bring them to conferences and then meet them on site and support them as they were going through their leadership journey. And while the Catalyst office is in Swanee, Georgia, started attending church at Gwinnett Church, which is a part of the North Point Ministries multi-site. And then a year later, they were like, hey, would you love to come on staff? And I was like, that would be cool. So I started off at Gwinnett Church, in groups assimilation, connecting thousands of people a year into groups, then started supporting all of adult ministries, pastoral care, starting point, group leaders. And then I ended up at Buckhead Church in singles ministry of all places. But we were really focused on connecting people in Atlanta to the local church. And we would do these things called gatherings, which would connect like tens of thousands of people a year into the church. And then I ended up at Willow Creek, where Tim, this is where you and I met, where I had the pleasure and privilege of serving in two different functions. One overseeing central adult ministries, so all things guest experience, pastoral care, and groups. And then as the online campus pastor, which is where you and I know each other, and maybe by far my most favorite role of all those things, but figuring out how to
Yeah.
leverage digital strategy and connecting people, once again, who were watching at home into the church. That's all about connecting people into the church.
Yeah, and I loved your heart for that because it was, there's plenty of people that can focus on the digital or the online. You have this pastor's heart and this process brain. Like you're able to like help people like work along a pathway and figure out what's it going to take to help them take their next step. And it was fun. We had tons of great conversations around that. And having you on the team was fantastic. What specifically, like, what was it about that? You said that was your favorite part. What about that made you wake up every day excited to come and do that?
Yeah, so I love innovation. I love thinking into the future, thinking of how the church can be really creative in the ways that they connect. But also, a little fun fact about me, during the pandemic, I really got into studying tech and I got certified as a product manager. So it was all about figuring out, how to bring things to market, how to understand, people and their needs and designing, processes for them. And I just thought while I was going to do that, I was like, man, the church would really benefit of thinking about user centered and user experience processes, but the heart of pastoring. So there's like strategy with empathy. And I think, being the online campus pastor was the arena of starting to experiment. And there was a lot of freedom to experiment and think through, okay, if we would borrow some of these processes from other places, but with the heart of, hey, we believe in the gospel, we believe in the local church, I think there's something there that could be really beautiful to build upon.
Yeah. And the other thing that we breezed over, but the you were instrumental in getting rooted, plugged into our church. And you might think, what's so hard about that? It's a curriculum, you just get people to go through it. But it was like a significant strategy to get thousands of people, our staff first and doing the pilots and then getting thousands of people ramped up so that it became really to this day rooted is because of a lot of the efforts that you led initially is it's very much a part of the ecosystem of spiritual formation at Willow now.
And neither of us are getting a kickback from Rooted, but it
That's
was,
right.
it was, we we're not sponsored by Rooted, but it was one of those things when you're thinking about seven churches and this spiritual formation need of seven churches, how to, strategize and bring alignment, win over, pastors, people, congregants, volunteers into moving something in a new direction. But also what it is, it's an experiential discipleship outlet. It really isn't just curriculum based, it's about living it out as well. And I think what we've learned from that at Willow and even other churches that I'm working with who are now moving forward with pushing rooted, it's one of those things that's fun to help build spiritual formation pathways for churches who are looking for that.
Yeah, and it is a great curriculum. Also, your presentation, I was still remember back, we were in a meeting with our executive team, which was what, 18 to 20 different leaders, all very strong, gifted leaders with their own ideas of how to do things. And you just paved the way before that meeting and in that meeting. It was the fastest adoption I ever saw anything happen at Willow in my 4 years there. When, it was a sense of you're trying to like bring them along, and by the end of that meeting, they're like, "Okay, when can we start?" And then you're like, "Oh, wait, we got some things we got to do to
Yeah, we have a
make sure that
journey, we
we
have a
we
journey
have a
to
journey." But that was great. And you've since you stepped away from Willow about a year ago, and since then have been able to walk with a few different organizations. What's been most exciting for you in the last year?
Yeah, so multi-sites who are looking to really be intentional with their spiritual formation pathway. And once again, not just instilling curriculum, but developing culture around discipleship and spiritual formation. That is really exciting to me. And then as well as the digital engagement realm, we think about what you can do with email, social, even experiences, digital content. I think my clients who I work with who are interested in those two areas, like that to me is the most fun. I could stay up all
Yeah.
night, brainstorming problems and thinking of solutions for that.
And they sound like two, some people might say it's two distinct, completely different, but areas. But it's interesting how often they come together, the digital engagement and the spiritual formation come together for organizations that you're working with.
Yeah. And we always had the saying, especially if you're in guest experience, it was the parking lot to the seat. And we've now said, oh, hey, it's the site, it's the website to the seat. But we got to think, you're at church maybe 2.5 hours when you're sitting in service, an hour and a half, 2 hours, 2.5 hours. And then we think about all the touch points that we miss throughout the week that digital can cover. And when we think about a congregant's experience, we tend to lump in person and digital separate when we really should overlap them together. And I think building like a user-centered experience that integrates both, I think would be better for everyone's discipleship journey and for church engagement down the road.
And probably most churches are experiencing what we experienced at Willow, and a lot of churches we work with are experiencing that is, yeah, 2.5 hours a week, maybe, but they're coming like two times a month, one
Right.
time every 6 weeks, that kind of thing.
Yes. Once every 5, 6 weeks. And
Yeah.
we're missing so much of people's attention because we keep centering our efforts, our initiatives on in person when we really could also be thinking through how do we reach people digitally?
Yeah. That's great. You're now working alongside some churches and organizations in these areas. What's the ideal arrangement you like to work with a church if they're like looking to move the ball forward in either or both of these areas, in digital engagement or in spiritual formation, spiritual pathways, helping our people take their next steps, which a lot of churches are doing decent getting people in the front door and having a hard time figuring out the next step on that. What's that look like for you when you come alongside a church?
So a typical engagement looks like 9 to 12 months. Obviously, we do an assessment of where you're at with environments, leader culture, what you've already started to instill before as a part of spiritual formation. But ideally, what we love to do is assess and then tailor a solution based on some of your goals, your organization's goals, and your mission, your vision, your values. And then I come alongside to help say, all right, here's my recommendation on curriculum experience, but also I think the biggest piece that takes so long is culture and really building a
Yeah.
strong leader culture and a strong groups culture that can support closing that back door on engagement. And then with the digital engagement piece, that could look anywhere between 6 to 12 months, just looking for what you need and how we can come alongside to build better processes for you.
Love it. So reach out to us at Leading Smart if we can connect you with Betsy, or see if just to have a further conversation to see if you might be a good fit for what you're trying to face. What I decided, when I launched out doing this Leading Smart thing full time, was I didn't want to just pull in a bunch of people on the team. I wanted people that I actually like doing life with and that I trust, and also people that could do stuff I can't do. So Betsy fits all of those categories. So Faith and I enjoy doing life with her. She lives in Chicago, not close enough to the burbs. She lives actually in Chicago. Yeah, yeah. You live where I want to live, but I live where I
I
get to
keep
live
telling you, you
because,
and Faith could, you guys could be here. It'd be great.
yeah,
I think you live your best lives here.
you're preaching to the choir. You got to talk my wife into it. But anyway, and she does bring some things that I can't personally bring to a church. And so it's fun to have her on the team. So reach out to us if we can make a connection and have another conversation to see if Betsy be a good fit for you. But Betsy, thanks for what you do for the church and thanks for being my friend.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, and thanks for. I love that our friendship has developed way beyond our staff relationship. It's been a gift.
It's great. All right, see ya.
Bye.